And we'd love for you to take a minute to share your favorite way to enjoy a potato. And before you all got on, Jess was talking about how hers is a classic French fry. It is hard to beat a classic French fry. I don't know how you all feel about that. It's something that's near and dear to my heart at HFLI because we think about sharing fries as a way of generating community. But Beth, what have you got for us?
Well, I had my classic favorite last night, which is, and I don't, those of you in Michigan, outside Michigan, or maybe states that border Canada, may not be familiar with this, but it's called poutine. Our Canadian neighbors love poutine, and I admit to being a fan. So poutine is French fries. I'd always start with the great French fries, and then cheese curds, and then you pour a classic brown gravy over the top.
That sounds healthy.
Oh yeah,
Oh
gotta
yeah,
love it. Good art for every once in a while. Every once in a while.
right. Well, we've got a bunch of ideas popping into the chat. There's baked potatoes with sour cream. There's uh, uh, potato chips like Lay's potato chips. Not a huge thing. I think, isn't there a Michigan brand of potato chips?
I think it's Lay's.
Is it Lay's? So I grew up in the
I
South and
think.
we had Charles chips. And so you could have chips delivered to your house once a week in this big can. So
Yeah,
everybody had these super large metal cans.
it's better made.
Oh, better made or
Better made.
local. Mm-hmm.
You're right. Yeah, I should be a better Michigander than that.
Yeah.
Potato skins. Gosh, I haven't had potato skins in a long time. A good one's covered in salt. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Low browns. Miranda, good to see you. And fried with onions. Yeah, that's pretty good too, especially if you throw a little cheese on those.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So we are glad that you are here. We're going to start, I think, in a minute or so. Give everybody just a little bit of time to ease on in. We're excited to say hello. And we are talking about our favorite ways to enjoy potatoes. I think one of the things I learned is that potatoes are in every culture, which is really fun to think about how they differ across continents and across ethnic backgrounds and location and age and all of those things. But I think everybody loves a good potato, but most people love a good potato. Shouldn't say everyone.
Some people like them in healthier ways than others. I saw someone in here who oven baked potato wedges. Like those are sounding kind of healthy, but
They're sounding pretty healthy, but you could dip them in
yeah.
things. You're not going to do anything unhealthy.
Can't go wrong with hash browns for breakfast too. So
Fair, 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 fair.
I see that in the chat as well. I love it. We still got people coming in. Thank you so much. I mean, I didn't know when to expect for a mid-June ACTE webinar. So we're so glad to see so many of you. So glad. And we're hoping, since many of you are coming from around different parts of the country, we hope that the weather will be good and kind to you today. We know lots of places are under weather warnings. So stay safe today, everybody, and hopefully all will end well once we get through this.
We getting any more thoughts in there? I keep thinking of, am I missing anything like growing up, those little fried shoestring potatoes? Did y'all eat those? They were tight. And I'm sorry, but a good like garlic cheese mashed potato might be my favorite ever. So I do love French fries. I love sweet potato fries, but garlic mashed potatoes, that is really hard to beat.
We got smothered potatoes in the chat too.
Also yummy.
We just gave the blanket potatoes almost anyway.
That sounds good to me. Also, au gratin. Anytime you add cheese in, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, potatoes and cheese can pretty much never go wrong. And
Fair.
then if you throw onions, potato, cheese, onions, that's kind of one of those perfect foods. Kind
Yeah.
of can't ever really.
Yep. Well, I'm ready if you are.
All right, let's get this party started. We are glad to have you with us today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the magnificent potato. Can't think of a better way to start a webinar than talking about potatoes. And there is a method to our madness with sharing about potatoes and asking you to share at least your thoughts, if not your voice, about potatoes. And Debbie alluded to that, but we'll talk a little bit more about why we asked you to share about those as we got started. So I'd like to welcome all of my colleagues from ACTE, especially those of you from the Career Academy section of the New and Related Services Division of ACTE, to our webinar today, One Strategy for Retaining CTE Teachers in a Challenging Climate. My name is Beth Grislak, and I am a community coach with Ford Next Generation Learning. And today, we know that one challenge all of you face is hiring and then retaining those CTE teachers that you worked so hard to get. So we know that CTE teachers, like all teachers, and so one of the great things about the webinar today is while we're going to focus on CTE teachers, what we're going to share today is relevant for all the teachers that you might come in contact with, is they want to belong. And that can be especially challenging for CTE teachers who are new to buildings, who might have come in under emergency or temporary support. So how do we help them feel connected to the larger school staff and to that school community? How might we address their individual needs along with helping to develop a strong and inclusive school culture and culture among, if you are in a community or you are a CTE director where you're hiring teachers across multiple buildings, how are we creating that sense of community and culture across multiple buildings? So we hope by the end of the session today that you will leave with a framework that helps identify elements for educator belonging and effective leadership practices that support that CTE retention. You can see this on the slide here. A new approach to identifying possible solutions to complex problems, such as hiring and retaining teachers, and a working list of possible solutions to explicitly connected to addressing that CTE teacher retention engagement, and hopefully 2 to 3 steps that you can take immediately after you leave here to build or strengthen your school's culture and sense of belonging. So one thing I really want to note is that our session today is designed to include your voices and ideas. So we're going to ask you to share at various points during the next 45 minutes with your colleagues, because you are often the best resources as we do this work. So as we began our session by asking you to share your thoughts about the potato. The reason we did that is because when we find a moment of connection like that, we are beginning to create a sense of community. And hopefully that inspires you or makes you feel a little bit more comfortable sharing your voice and your ideas. And that's what we're trying to build, and hopefully inspiring you to build in your back in your home school and district, is helping especially those new CTE teachers feel a little bit more comfortable in sharing their voice and their ideas with the larger community. So before we jump in any further, I do want to give my colleague Debbie a chance to introduce herself quickly.
Hey, everybody. My name is Debbie Parizic. I am the ED of Henry Ford Learning Institute, and I work to advance excellence in schools with students and teachers so that they can experience learning, teaching, and leading that really supports powerful and meaningful learning outcomes. So I'm really excited to be here with you today.
And Deb, did I actually really introduce myself? Because I jump in and I don't even know. I think I said hello to everybody, but I'm Beth Grislak, and I'm a community coach and learning design lead with Ford Next Generation Learning. And we help communities through a community-connected process to develop and create career academy and other powerful partnership connected learning for students so that they are ready for career and life after high school. And so we certainly engage with a lot of CTE teachers, and so work closely with Debbie and her organization to help create that sense of belonging. So I'm sorry if I didn't do that sooner, but we want to ground today's session in just a little bit of research background, and we will have, when you get the slide deck at the end of the session today, a few citations for what we're going to share here. So as many of you know, it is challenging to hire CTE teachers. It's difficult to find those. And then once we do have them, they don't stay with us at the same rate that other teachers do. So as you can see on the screen here, we experience a higher turnover rate with CTE teachers. Part of that is we see with any teacher who has a temporary certificate or is teaching on a waiver or permit, that they have a higher turnover rate than teachers that are fully certified. We also see that among all teachers across various subject areas, that CTE teachers have an even higher turnover rate than special education teachers. The only teachers that have a higher turnover rate than CTE teachers are bilingual and ESL teachers, believe it or not. Also, we see here too that we also have a higher percentage of CTE teachers that are in their first 3 years of teaching. And we know that if they have a higher turnover rate and we have a higher percentage of them in their first 3 years, we know that teachers don't really begin to settle in and truly start becoming effective until they are 3 years in. So if we're turning them over before they hit that 3-year mark, then we're not even getting the best version of them, and they aren't experiencing success at the level that we would hope that they would before we lose them again. We also know from research that we will spend on average $25,000 to retain and retrain a teacher to fill that spot that we lost because of teacher turnover. So it's really critical to us from a fiscal sense to retain that CTE teacher if we possibly can. And last, we also know, and this is really where we're grounding our webinar and our conversation and work today, is that teachers who have a low workplace satisfaction rate are going to leave that workplace at a 3 times higher rate than teachers that have a high satisfaction rate. And one of the key drivers to high satisfaction rate is a sense of belonging and engagement with the school and having a leadership that really sees them and inspires them in their work, among other things that we'll touch on just a little bit about. Let me make sure I got that right. So positive school environments, low stress burnout, they're willing to stay, but again, it's that they're feeling that sense of becoming more proficient, and they have that sense of belonging and that strong leadership. So we're really going to focus our conversation today on how do we, from your role as CTE directors, coordinators, others that are working closely with those CTE teachers, help them feel like they're developing professionally and that we're helping them feel like they are truly a part of the larger school staff. I'm going to turn it over to you, Debbie.
Sure. So as Beth went through that incredible list of things that might be frustrating to CTE teachers and frankly to you, what we've learned and what has been gathered from a really wide range of resources and studies can be distilled down into these 4 elements. How can we really build up this sense of belonging? How do we create a culture that lets people know that they're valued, that they are affirmed, that they're respected, and that they are really a part of us. And so from all of the research, and I'm going to say this is not HFLI's research, we are building off of the work of many, many other people who have come together to say these things matter. And if we bring it down to these 4 components, we can really pay attention. I want to also layer in the fact that oftentimes when we're in this position of wanting to build this culture of and community of belonging and really address the challenges that we're working to address, that some of the interventions that teachers would like are outside of our realm of control. So we are not going to talk today about, wouldn't it be great if we can increase compensation? Because we know when CTE teachers come into the teaching profession, they typically take a cut in pay, and it affects their work life and their balance. We are not really going to talk about reducing class size. And we know many, many teachers talk about the importance of being able to connect more personally with individual students. And it's hard to do that when you have 30 or 40 or even 45 young people sitting in your learning community space to get to each one of them and know them genuinely and authentically. We're not going to talk about schedule shifts because that's a district level. We're not going to talk about contractual changes. That involves a lot more people. We're really going to focus today on what are ways that individuals who are in positions of decision and effectiveness are able to execute something new to strengthen that community of belonging. And we're going to focus on these 4 elements. So these are driven by kind of things that teachers have shared and have really focused on. And if we were able to address these 4 areas, it would make a dramatic difference in their decision to remain in the school or the district that they are. One is that there are 4 of these pain points. And now I'm repeating myself, so sorry about that. But I really want to get down to, it's not that the research talked to other people, it's that the researchers really focused in on what are teachers saying. So these pain points come from that point of view. But by extension, they affect all of us. So when you have teachers who are not staying, that affects student connection to community. It affects communication. It affects relationships with families. It then ultimately really impacts student learning outcomes. So when we focus on this, we can really have a very significant difference in the experience of everybody that's involved. So what are these 4 elements? First and foremost is that teachers have agency. They are trusted to make decisions and to execute their work in their professional capacity. The second is that the leaders of their school or their department or their district provide meaningful professional development. That supplemental professional learning is tied to what those individuals need and what they have said is important to their work and their sense of satisfaction. It's just in time, it's just enough, and it's just for me. Third, they want their work environments to be equitable. This is more than like surface DEI, but it's programs and policies and actions that really ensure that everyone is treated with dignity and respect, that their experiences and needs are affirmed and validated as right, and that this is not just some poster on the wall, but in fact, these positions are directly incorporated into policies, practices, behaviors, interactions. And last, that the organization prioritizes wellness. In this profession, where educators like all of you and us too are experiencing high rates of stress and increasing responsibilities, it's really important that leadership sustain a focus on taking care of the people that we ask to take care of our kids. And that means actions, not just recommendations. So why, let me go back to why this matters. Like, why should we pay attention to this? And why use these 4 elements? One, these 4 elements directly address the issues that have been identified by teachers. They said it. And if we don't listen to that, we fall back from being truly human-centered and connecting to what will get to the root cause of the issues that people are facing. 2, when you think about developing this community of belonging with these 4 elements, you're engaging the entire community as part of the solution. Kids can be part of it, other colleagues can be part of it, community members out beyond the school walls, beyond the district parameters. You can engage businesses, you can engage family members, lots of different ways to have everybody be part of that solution. The third is that this approach helps identify solution ideas that are really within your own control. They are things that you can execute without getting too much permission, without really changing budget, without asking for contractual adjustments. Fourth, they really incorporate that approach that is adaptive leadership. It's a complex problem. There's not a one and done answer. There's not a technical solution. So we're going to have to navigate and really think about who are the key stakeholders and how do we adjust and change over time. By holding these principles, these 4 elements, we can do that, really connecting with educators. And the ultimate goal is because we want to increase teacher retention, their satisfaction, and their effectiveness. And those things are tied together because at the very end of the day, at the end of the year, at the end of those 12 years, we want improved learner outcomes. So that's the why these things matter, why these elements matter. So how are we going to get there? First of all, we want to really, as Beth mentioned, draw in the wisdom of the community that we have. You all know what you're doing. You all know what is working, and you're looking for more. And the best place to get it, other than this webinar, is for you to talk to one another. So what we would love for you to do is into the chat, share what you're currently doing to address any or all of these 4 elements of belonging. How are you working to increase agency among your teachers? How might your leaders in your system be providing meaningful professional development? How are your work environments becoming more equitable, or what are you doing to work on that concern? And lastly, how are you prioritizing through action wellness among your educators? We're going to take about 60 to 90 seconds to allow you to share those ideas. We'll capture those and we'll try and bring them back in the next step of our of the webinar. And as you all are thinking, I'm thinking back to when I was much closer to classroom teachers, and some of the things that we did, which really promoted wellness, is we actually hosted a wellness day on our campus, and we invited in massage therapists and manicurists and field instructors to support outdoor activities. We had family members provide potluck meals. So we really created an entire day that said, we care about you as educators, and we're just going to pause what we're doing before we ask you to turn in all your grades, so that there was a chance to breathe. So that wellness day was really popular among our team as one idea that you might consider. I'm looking in the chat here. I've got somebody suggesting one-on-one check-ins every week or bi-weekly. Another is simply listening while you're doing your walk-arounds and surveying them, making a point of visiting regularly to provide feedback, seeing what they're doing so you can celebrate it, not assume it. Looking at strengthening business partnerships so that teachers have access to more meaningful workforce opportunities, both internships and externships, I would imagine, as part of that. Bringing a sense of humor into the overall experience as often things come up that you weren't expecting, and really being able to sort of like relax and recognize that none of us are perfect. Incorporating CTE into those core classes, really being seen so that there's a connection. Love the fact that you all are bringing these ideas into play in the chat. Give you about 20 more seconds, and don't let my saying, hey, there's a time limit, stop you from adding ideas. Keep doing that, because this chat will be monitored, and then we'll be able to share those into the overall mural as we get to that point. So maybe 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to keep going, but appreciate the activity and the generosity of the ideas that you're sharing in the chat. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to start to organize. And what we're going to do is we're going to use something called an ideation matrix as a way for us to visualize the challenge that we're working on, the core considerations or categories that are going to factor into the work, that the problem that we're trying to address. And so this is what an ideation matrix looks like. It's also called a creativity matrix. It's a tool from human-centered design. And a lot of the work that I do with HFLI is how can we use tools from design thinking or human-centered design to really lean into the unique and complex challenges and opportunities within education, so we can find innovative solutions, new solutions, more aligned solutions, responses that can really move us toward advancing excellence in education. So this is what the matrix looks like that we're going to work with. And just so you know, I'm going to walk through my what, why, now, how. An ideation matrix is really a tool. It's just a way for you to organize your information and considerations so that you can generate a wider range of creative, diverse ideas. Oftentimes we start to walk down a singular path as we're brainstorming. This approach lets us bring together two different factors in order to prompt a different focal point, a way for us to say, I didn't think about putting these two things together. That prompts some new ideas. It gets set up as a grid, as you saw, and that allows you individually and as a team to come at the problem from a much different set of perspectives, a wider range of ideas, opportunities. So why do it that way, right? Like I said, oftentimes when you're trying to work on a problem, you start to go down a path and you just keep going on that path. And you'll even bring along your team with you. So we've got this kind of group think happening. When you use an ideation matrix, it forces you to broaden out and push past your conventional thinking. It really helps your whole team think about those divergent possibilities and to get specific rather than generic. Using a visual matrix like that, and I like to make them really large and put them way up on the wall so you can stand around them and everybody can use Post-it notes and you can really kind of move back and forth and engage your physical involvement as well as your cognitive involvement, is that it helps capture your ideas from the whole team. And it builds everyone's knowledge of what everyone's thinking about, and you can lean towards shared understanding, consensus building, critiquing and questioning each other's ideas. The last thing I love about a grid, and this is maybe just me, but I'm going to put it out there, is when you work in a grid, you notice where there is a lot of energy and enthusiasm and work, where you got a bunch of ideas, and then where there's a gap. And so that lets you say, is that gap because there really isn't anything for us to think about? Or is it that we just haven't gotten to that point yet? So it really serves as a visual reminder or a visual nudge. Where are we putting our attention? What might else we need to talk about or think about? Or, wow, we thought about it and really there's not much to say there. So that's one of several of the reasons that I think using an ideation matrix is really helpful when you're working on a complex problem. So coming back to this ideation matrix, and this is what it looks like, we're going to actually walk through how to set one up. And Beth is going to shift over to Mural in just a second, but let me focus on what this looks like now. At the top, right where it says ideation matrix now, we're going to drag in a description of the problem or the person we're trying to think toward for solutions. And in our case, we're going to share someone called Frank. We're going to describe Frank in that little box up at top, and that keeps Frank front and center to the work that we're doing. Across the top, where you see how might we question statement prompts, that's where we're going to layer in what are human-centered or people-focused segments of the problem that we're thinking about. It is a place where we might put different personas. It is a place where we might put different market segments. It might even be different things to think about from a single person's perspective. And then down the left, you'll see we've already put in our 4 elements of belonging. Along the left, you put categories or enablers. What are some factors that we want to use as frames or considerations as we think about this problem together? So I'm going to pause. I'm going to stop sharing so that Beth can share, and we're going to shift into using an active mural.
All right, how's that look for folks?
That looks great, Beth.
Okay. So as Debbie mentioned, when we're doing this work with this matrix, we really want it to stay human-centered. And so Debbie mentioned that we're going to be talking about Frank. And Frank is our person. Frank is the person that we are going to be thinking about as we begin to populate this matrix. And while Frank is not an actual person, Frank could be any one of your CTE teachers in the moment. I think he is pretty typical of what many of your CTE teachers might look like. And I'm going to talk a little bit about him as Debbie begins to move the description about him into that upper part of the matrix. So Frank is a 48-year-old construction trades teacher with 2 years of experience. So he fits that typical model that we talked about a little bit earlier. He's within those first couple of years of coming into our program. He's a little bit older, so we know he has plenty of expertise and skill that we are super happy to have in our CTE program. But we want him, and he needs a way to feel that he is a valued member of the whole school community. He's new. From what we have observed, he doesn't fully participate in the staff meetings. Partly because he doesn't often understand what the other teachers are talking about. He came in on an emergency permit, and he struggles with knowing how to connect with the young people in order to teach them what he knows and does. He's super enthusiastic. He's excited about being here. He understands the mission. He volunteered from his company to come over and take on this role, but he's been struggling a little bit with connecting with 15, 16, 17-year-olds. So as we begin to think about how we might help Frank in a variety of ways, we need to keep all of these things in mind. So what we're going to do is Debbie and I are going to begin by modeling one of the first column for you, and we're going to be doing that around these things down the side. So as we think about how we might help Frank, we're going to be keeping in mind, how do we help him develop some agency and support that agency? We're going to be thinking about, how do we as CTE leaders provide meaningful professional development to Frank? How are we ensuring that the workplace, the work environment is equitable, that Frank is experiencing it as being equitable? And how are we supporting his wellness? So as Debbie and I were brainstorming, we thought about Frank and his scenario, and we said, well, how might we help Frank develop a strong connection to our whole school? So we're going to model this first one, and as we're doing that, we're going to be asking you to start thinking a little bit about how might you respond to that second question that we'll be asking as we wrap up the first one. So, Debbie, as I'm thinking about, and before we jump in, Debbie, is there anything else that you would want to add or say before you and I start talking about how we might support Frank in making a stronger connection to our school?
I think the only thing, Beth, I would add is that this is a fluid, messy process, and you'll see us go through that as well. When you bring a bunch of different people together and you're really working on a complex problem and you're really deeply caring about how can we best support and serve Frank, that's not clean. And so it's not straightforward. It's iterative in that overall approach. And that's what I love about using adaptive leadership, and what I love about using design thinking is it doesn't sanitize what's going on. It says, we're all human. It's a little messy. We love Frank. We love our CTE teachers. And we want to think about different ways. So we're going to generate some possibilities. Some of them may be wacky. Some of them may be like, oh, spot on. That's a great idea. But that's the point of brainstorming also, is we're going to try not to self-edit in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have been thinking a lot about Frank. I've been watching him over, the last several weeks. And, I do feel like he does lack a little confidence, and I really want him to feel some ownership. And so I'm wondering, Debbie, if, we have a school committee on real world learning, and I feel like given Frank's background and the nature of, the subject that he teaches, the construction trade, if he might be a really interesting voice to invite in being part of that subcommittee. So I was wondering if you think it might make sense to invite Frank into that subcommittee.
So yes, but I'm also going to say that just because you said it, we should put it on the board, right? We can pick and choose later. Let's just throw them all up there and see what might make sense. Because I was thinking sometimes being a part of a committee might be too formal for Frank, and he just needs a way to come hang out. And my friends hang out over coffee in the mornings at a coffee clutch as a way to just socialize and connect and see what's up. So those could be two different ways where he could build some connections that might build some voice, where he could feel like, hey, I can share those ideas too in that coffee clutch, coming from an Eastern European background.
No, I agree with you, and you're right. Some of my ideas probably, I agree.
Oh,
Some of my
we're
ideas
not judging.
might scary to Frank, but so yeah. So the next one we'll throw up, but you're right. I hear you about the informal versus formal, because I was kind of wondering too. You know, some of the gen ed teachers don't really understand the connections between their subject and Frank's subject, but I know we're also really trying to help Frank, you know, see some really strong instruction so that he can improve his instruction as well. So I was wondering if there was, you know, we might encourage him to do a project with maybe, I'm thinking of one of our really strong English teachers, and that might be a natural project connection place.
Oh, I like that. And then what we could think about also is if we have a number of different projects and we really want to lift up the work that Frank and the partner are doing, as well as what other teachers are doing, maybe we do like we do with our kids. They have like learner exhibitions. And so maybe every month at staff meeting, we do a learning or a teaching showcase. And so they can see something like that. So I'm going to throw that one up there as well, so they can do some peer-to-peer sharing and celebrating and learning.
Yeah, and that feels a little bit lower stakes too, because then Frank can decide if he wants to share some of that work or not. I think, speaking of how Frank wants to share, you know, I'm a big celebration person. I kind of like to put my work out there. I love to have it critiqued. But I'm wondering too, if we need to be thoughtful about how Frank would like to be celebrated. You know, I know he's been on this journey to earn his certification, and I want to honor his milestones, because I think achieving those milestones on the way to certification is really important. But I don't want to shout that from the rooftops if that's not what Frank's into. So I wonder if we need to have a conversation with Frank about how he would like to be celebrated.
Definitely. I think that's true for anybody. Some people love to be on stage. Some people want a quiet certificate. Other people just want a gift certificate to Chili's. You know, all of those different things can work. You know, I've been thinking a lot about, I think it's really an opportunity also when we consider building equitable environments at work, how we think about that a lot from the kid perspective, of student perspective, but we also need to think about it from the educator perspective. And I don't have a ton of ideas in this moment, but I also recognize that CTE teachers have different needs. And so part of equity is not related to identity, race, you know, ethnicity, et cetera, but it is related to the unique responsibilities that you have. So if I broaden that sense of equitable work environments, I really want to think about, well, what does Frank need? What would really be beneficial to Frank? And thinking about, maybe a lot of people just don't know. So I'm going to think about a way that I could generate a list of things that are unique to Frank that other people could maybe pay attention to in order to better understand his needs. So not complicated, but let's just help other people understand what Frank's going through.
I think that's great. And I agree with you that I was struggling with this one a little bit. So I think it would be great as we continue to think about Frank if we brought a couple other people into the conversation, because maybe they would have some other ideas too about kind of helping us fill out the matrix a little bit. But, you know, I was thinking about wellness, and one of the things that I really like to do, and it's really low stakes, is how about a 1 point kind of smiley face survey, you know, just sent out on Fridays, just to do a how are you doing today or this week, Frank, where he can just give a thumbs up, kind of a sideways thumbs, you know, downward thumb, and that way I can kind of just gauge where Frank is. And, you know, do that kind of prompt me then to do a check-in and really see where he is with things, and prompt me to provide some support if needed, just to make sure, you know, socially and emotionally that he's doing okay as he's navigating these first few years of teaching.
Yeah. So I just saw the quick request come through in the chat for us to see if we can make that section of the mural bigger. we will do our best. And I hear you. Those are teeny little Post-its. We will also make this mural available to you after the fact so that you can read what we've put up there. And we're really verbalizing exactly what we pre-wrote so that you all could have this after the fact. Given where we are kind of in this overall flow, what I really want to pull forward, Beth, and I'm sort of jumping on top of your section, is this is the kind of conversation that you would have with your team. Like, how do we intentionally consider this? How might we? How might we help Frank build connection? And how do we think about these enablers along the left that give us different lenses to sort of prompt our thinking in different focal areas? It's easy to go off in a bunch of tangents and just start brainstorming. And that's possible too. And so as that happens with your team, you would start to populate different areas of the matrix. And you're like, hey, parking lot that, let me stick it over there. The discipline to stay in your how might we lane with your enablers takes some practice. And it's not wrong to jump off, shift a lane over and then come back. But the point of these matrices and the grid is to really say, okay, let me think about this combo. Now let me think about this combo. Now let me go over here and do a different combination. So I'm well off the answer to the question just a second ago, but we will make this available to you. And we're modeling how you do this together and why it's important to write them and stick them up so people can come back and ask questions about them later. Given where we are with time, Beth, I wonder if we sort of open it up and let people say either in the chat or verbally what they might do to address that second question for a few minutes, because I want to honor that we ask people to think about it. If you put them in the chat, we will type stickies as fast as possible. And then I will also pull up our other ones that we thought through in advance just to give you a second example set. Sorry, I'm hovering over there. So if you all will take a minute to think about possible ideas in the chat, and maybe Beth, if you want to increase the size of that one sticky with the how might we, that might be a little helpful.
So the question is, how might we help Frank develop meaningful connections with students that support learning?
And let me check chat because I'm going to start to type.
And I chat because I can't type. Otherwise, if I type, I'm going to move the matrix and then people won't be able to see it at all.
Okay, CTE specific.
So somebody said, encourage him to sponsor an after-school program or CTSO. Love that. Somebody mentioned
typing.
What's that?
Performance typing, when you're trying to type and keep track of everything at the same time.
Workforce development experiences connected to curriculum experiences.
Sponsor an after-school program up there. I think maybe one or two more, Beth. And then what we'll do is we'll pull everything from the chat and populate the mural as an after the fact takeaway.
Sure. So, and then Frank is from industry, so connecting student interest profiles around culture interviews will build agency around his CTE program.
Okay.
I said that it's all about finding your tribe, right? Once students are interested and you know who's interested, it's that culture and belonging for the CTE person, because they're for industry, right? They don't have a teacher's background. So building that community could be a struggle for them, but if they know the students are interested in what they're teaching and delivering, and you can find out beforehand, now you have a conversation builder around that.
Yeah.
That's great, Chauncey.
I'm gonna stick that in there and
And
figure out where it goes later.
Yep, I love that. Find that tribe. Let's see. Find a project he is or wants to work on in class, and then provide school recognition or progress updates around what he and the students are doing with it.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
And there's a couple more there that, like Debbie said, we will capture those and make sure those get into the matrix. And again, you can see we pre-thought some too, just to give you some other idea starters, and we'll share those as well.
All right. So one of the things we wanted to leave you with is that once you put these ideas onto the mural or onto your creative matrix, you want to start to talk as a team about how you can assess them, how you can really think through, how do I as a leader make these ideas have the possibility for a stronger implementation. And there's 3 really effective leadership moves that you can make that can apply to any of the different ideas that you all have generated. The first is it's really important, and I'm just going to drag these and set them over to the side here. Beth, I'm putting them in the 3rd column. One is to know teachers genuinely. And that really means, how do I pay attention to who my teachers are as human beings? How do I schedule time with them? How do I talk and listen to them? I'm able to see their strengths. I understand what their aspirations are, not generally like teachers want to have strong learning outcomes, but how does Frank really see success for his students from the lens of his particular CTE program? So knowing Frank genuinely as a person with needs, as a person with wants, as a person with personality. The second thing to really pay attention to is, how are we engaging teachers meaningfully? How are we connecting with them to empower their decisions, really setting guardrails, and then listening and learning and leaning into trusting them to make good decisions? How are we giving specific feedback that's meaningful in ways that they've asked for and identified, not just, again, generic evaluations? How can we then think about how are our decisions transparent? So if we're engaging meaningfully, we're authentic in when we show up, and we're treating them and dealing with them and interacting with them in meaningful, personal, genuine ways. The last thing is, how do we make sure that we celebrate them authentically, right? How are we showing authentic gratitude? How are we doing private recognitions and public recognitions when it's appropriate for one or the other? How might we really think about big and small wins, not just the big splashy end of year shows, but the, wow, I saw you make a real difference last week and I wanted to call that out. So as you think about the different ideas that have been put into the matrix or your team has come up with, you can go back to them and say, okay, if we really want to think about the once a week emoji survey, how can I make sure that I follow up with those responses to know my teachers genuinely? Who sent me a smiley face emoji? How can I go see what's that all about? If someone sent me an emoji that was confusing or unhappy, how do I make sure I check in, right? How can I engage with a teacher meaningfully around that feedback that they've given to me? And lastly, how can I celebrate some of those really super happy smiley faces? Not every lens, not every leadership move will relate equally or have the same influence or impact on the ideas, but it is a way for you to pay attention and continue to assess. Once we've got this whole matrix populated and we've really thought about these various ideas, how can I then turn them from an idea into an actionable intervention that can make a difference? All right. We've spent a lot of time in a teeny little mural. I appreciate that you all have really jumped in with us to try that strategy out. It's one that Beth is we've not done this specific webinar before, so it's always fun to, performatively try a new idea. But I want to bring us back to, what can you do from this after this webinar? So let me quick share my screen again and get to that. And we're here. And we will, where did you go? Sorry, everyone. Okay, now I'm set up. All right, so once you've worked on this with your team, or even if you're taking ideas back from this workshop webinar today, and you're pulling some of these ideas, the most important thing that you can do is not just jump in and do it. Take a moment, pause yourself, hold on there, cowboy, and really get impact feedback from your stakeholders. Check in with people. The people who know what's happening best are the ones who are experiencing it. That's human-centered design, right? So check in, make sure you're getting feedback before you launch. The second thing you could do is you could take this whole system, this approach, and hold a workshop of your own. Why not involve the people who are closest to the problems in the solution idea generation? We'll make sure that you have access to the matrix. That tool will also have a set of guidelines that you can run this similar workshop yourself, what to do, what to do, what to do next. Once you get to picking some ideas, one option you could think about is using an impact difficulty matrix, which is a way for you to say, if I pick this idea, what's the likely impact it will have? And how hard is it going to be to get this off the ground? So you're thinking about the power of impact, what change could it make? And what's my capacity to really get it done? Assessing the viability of your ideas. After you checked in, after you worked with people to generate new ideas, think about how hard it's going to be. And then lastly, NGL and HFLI are here to support. So we have more resources, they have more resources. We want to make sure that you all are put in positions of effectiveness and success beyond what you already have to do this work with your teachers. So I'm going to pause and say thank you for my part, and I'm going to turn it back over to Beth.
So at this point, Debbie and I just really want to know, what questions you might have. This was a new and different way to kind of approach a retention and recruitment problem you might have with CTE teachers. So, what are your thoughts? What comments, questions might you have to share with us today? And again, feel free to use the chat or use your voice.
I've done the adaptive leadership training in the past, and I always was thinking like, when does the academies and Henry Ford Learning Institute, when will they ever meet, right? So just being able to see that, I think I did it 2 summers ago, and I wrote out a plan on how to support teachers and administrators, right? And just like you said, like a lot of stuff that was listed on the chart, having those small conversations, showing them how to do field trip requests, getting their data together, because it could be frustrating for somebody that don't know nothing about school. So if they have an advocate that built a system, right? Just knowing the questions to ask and the system to go through to fully support somebody. So as you onboard people, because you know how schools are, we lose people all the time. A new year comes, we got to hire new people. So how do we strategically and intentionally build people from industry that want to come and support us in education, right? So that's just been a thing. Like when I did the adaptive leadership training, I said, how can I get adults on board with the vision of being able to see that we all are doing this together, right? You have a job, but I'm here to help you and walk you through this process. So not fast, right? But not in an accelerated way, but showing you that you can navigate through this and be able to understand that in leadership, I'm here for you to glean from me. So I remember that adaptive leadership training. I still have my paper of what goals I had set at home. It's rolled up and I look at it from time to time because it's necessary, because being in academy is hard. It is hard because you're dealing with so much change.
Absolutely. And one of the comments that came through in the chat is to be careful about the suggestions that they might just add more work. And the last thing we want to do is put more on people's plates. So really going back to that first point of next steps, get feedback, check in. Is this going to help address a challenge? Or does it address the challenge that you have and you are thinking maybe my CTE teachers can help me address it? We really wanted to focus today on how do we work from the perspective of the educators as addressing some of their needs, because retention really starts from, am I being seen and heard? Is someone working with me, not to take problems off my plate, but to help me work to address them? And another comment in there was, this was more about retention than recruitment. 100%. And I agree, we really focused heavily on retention. I think Beth's point about $25,000 if you lose a teacher, there's a small pool to start, very clearly about that. So let's work really hard to keep the ones that we have. And I will also say, if your district or your school builds a reputation as being an amazing, connected community of belonging place to work, recruitment will get a little easier. Not solved, but it does get a little bit easier.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Absolutely. We do need to wrap up. I want to honor your time. We always try to keep you to an hour or less with these webinars. Appreciate you being part of the conversation today, and hope that the tool is helpful. And I think you will see that there's a lot of different ways you can use this, this tool to help solve different challenges that you might have beyond just retaining your CTE teachers. But as we noted before, this will be available to you afterwards. You will have the slide deck, which very importantly, again, she slipped it in there at the bottom and didn't make too big of a deal about it. But learn.hfli.org. HFLI is an amazing organization and a great partner for Next Generation Learning. So please reach out and get those additional resources. They will also be part of at ACTE in December. Ford NGL will have a full one-day pre-conference session for those of you that are interested. So during that full one-day session, we will be providing opportunities for participants to really understand more deeply how to take your portrait of the graduate and move it from being a nice poster on the wall to creating a system-wide plan for implementing that in a meaningful way. How to build those cross-sector partnerships that strengthen business and industry engagement, moving from those one-off opportunities to really strengthening your whole system process for working with business partners. And then also part of that system is aligning schools, employers, post-secondary partners, and community around that goal of student success. And really that aligns too with what's happening in your portrait of the graduate. And last but not least, creating that system to ensure that 100% of your students complete a high quality career pathway while they are completing their high school experience. That is the power of that one-day professional pre-conference session that we will be doing at ACTE. And Debbie, I think you said that HFLI will also have a part in that conference session as well.
Will be part of your pre-session. We haven't defined. We're going to really try and listen to hear what people say would be most helpful given our kind of complementary lens to what Ford NGL is working on.
So we hope to see many of you there. And also, if you are interested in joining, as we mentioned, the Career Academy section is part of the new and related services division, and increasing our membership in the Career Academy section helps elevate us so that we can become our own recognized division within ACTE. So if you are interested in doing that, you can click on the QR code either now or when you get the slide deck, and the directions for becoming part of the Career Academy section are there for you to do that as well. So again, We really appreciate you joining us today. The ACTE webinars that are facilitated by Ford Next Generation Learning will take a break in the month of July, but we will be back in August, and then we will have one running every month through the end of the year. And so keep a lookout for those, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Please enjoy a summer break. Enjoy the weather, rejuvenate, relax, and gear up for the coming academic year. And we hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.